next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
He's here, kids. Alfred University, Professor of Political Science Emeritus, Dr. Robert A. Heineman.
Yes, thank you.
Trump and Putin, we've heard everybody else's analysis. Let's get yours.
Well, I think basically analysis of the event is fundamentally impossible because nobody has any idea what happened at the event. And it's amazing how much discussion you can have about something that is frankly, to put it mildly, amorphous. I do think there are some things we could take away from this, though. One, the inadvisability of these sort of off-the-cuff summit meetings, I think, was demonstrated in this particular instance. The idea that you simply walk in there and chat a little while and then basically come out with some findings or agreements, I mean, that's just not going to happen. And it can go haywire pretty fast. So, especially when you have somebody like Trump, who, to put it mildly, is pretty hard to direct in any case. So I don't think it by any means was a disaster, but it just shows the inadvisability of moving into something like this without some fairly detailed preparation. But let me point out to you that, and second, let me say that nobody has any idea what Trump and Putin talked about in their 2 hour and 15-minute one-on-one meeting. And they both seem satisfied with what came out of that. It's very hard to tell what they came up with, and it's quite possible that they came up with some pretty basic agreements, nothing particularly detailed perhaps, but perhaps spelled out later. We don't know. Trump says they made some progress with North Korea, and they made some progress with regard to Syria. There may be some other agreements or understandings that they reach. But we don't know. The intelligence community, do they know? I don't know that they know. And this attempt to say, well, we're going to force the translators to come before Congress and tell us what happened. Hold it. There is something known as executive privilege, and I think that covers the translators in this situation. That means that you cannot force someone to divulge the contents of a discussion with the president. The exception to that, of course, was U.S. v. Nixon, in which Nixon's transcripts were divulged involving a criminal investigation. But only the really not-so left seems to be suggesting there's something criminal going on here. So, I mean...
Can I say something there?
Well, sure.
I'm quoting another professor here. Professor Stephen Cohen, New York University. He goes on the John Batchelor show and Tucker Carlson show a lot. He says the reaction to Trump's comments from Russia, these reactions have been like mob violence.
Well, it is out of hand. Because they have no idea. Outside the comments that Trump made in the press conference, they have no idea what happened there. And to just go off half-cocked as they are seems to me as, not to put it mildly, disrespectful. Now, let me make another point here, and that is, as you may recall, Brian, some time ago, President Putin won re-election in Russia. And the intelligence community sent a email or a memo to Trump saying, whatever you do, don't congratulate him. And Trump called Putin and congratulated him. So
Does he have to do what they say?
No, he certainly does not. They're his advisors. And let's make that clear. And obviously he's not in the situation where he has all that much confidence in some of these intelligence agencies, especially the FBI, for example, where you have this FBI agent testifying before Congress what was it, this week maybe, saying that he'd never let any of his personal biases interfere with his carrying out his duty. And you have all these emails to his girlfriend there in the FBI. Just
struck the page.
Yeah, trashing Trump every chance he got. I mean, that's just totally unbelievable. So I can see why Trump has taken it upon himself to make some decisions of his own. Let's hope they're good decisions. But the point is, you do have a deep state here. And these intelligence agencies have been in place a long, long time. And their enemy from way back after World War II has been the Soviet Union, and then it's morphed over into the Russians, who I don't have any doubt they have a lot of information on. And that may be another aspect of this whole thing which has the intelligence community concerned, and that is the possibility that Putin knows how extensive our surveillance of his communications are. Back in the 50s and I think the early 60s, the United States was listening in to conversations in the Kremlin. Our satellites were sufficiently sophisticated that we were picking up everything that was being said in the Kremlin. Now, we don't do that anymore because the Soviets caught on to what was going on there and put up blockers and things of that sort. But it's amazing how sophisticated our surveillance is, and we may actually be listening into Putin's conversations. So when they say they clearly interfered, they may well be right. But again, as somebody pointed out on the web somewhere, there's a clear distinction. Maybe it was Congressman Reed, actually. Clear distinction between their meddling in the election and the idea that somehow Trump is in some sort of collusion with them.
Yes, he did say that, and Tucker Carlson has pointed out numerous times there's a big difference between Russian bots getting things out on Twitter and Facebook and Russian spies hacking into voting machines.
Right.
Which never happened, according to even the intelligence people. They don't even claim that the voting machines were touched.
Yes, no. They may have tried, but no, they haven't been able. So let's get this calmed down a little bit. And,
and can I say something? Can I get another quote in from Professor Stephen Cohen? Boy, this makes me feel smart. Professor Stephen Cohen says that the American ruling class right now, through the intelligence agencies, wants hostility towards Russia from the U.S.
Yeah, well, I think that's the claim that Trump is making as well, and that is that he says a lot of these commentators want a war between Russia and the United States. I don't think anybody wants that. But again, this mindset has gone back a long, long ways. And the Russians have, they can be pretty nasty. There's no question about that. But Trump's view, and again, here you have him breaking the mold for the way things have gone in the past and going out on his own. Obviously he's done the same thing in domestic politics. And I don't know, maybe it's not as safe to do that in foreign affairs. But he certainly isn't afraid to sit down with Putin, and maybe Putin, he says he's looking forward to meeting with Putin again, and maybe Putin will agree to meet with him in the near future to kind of pull his irons out of the fire a little bit. I don't know. But, you're far better off, and I don't see how you can look at it any other way, you're far better off talking to Putin and this guy from North Korea and Xi Jinping. I mean, you may disagree, you may be banging each other in a lot of other ways, but at least you're talking to each other.
Rush Limbaugh sums it up like this. President Donald Trump is on trial for winning in November of 2016. What do you think?
I really don't comment on anything Rush Limbaugh has to say. Thank you.
Well, we're talking with Dr. Robert Heineman here on the Newsmaker show. Dr. Bob, on the topic of New York State and Trump, Governor Andrew Cuomo says New York State is suing the Trump Foundation for corruption. Your thoughts?
Well, I think this is an attempt by Governor Cuomo to distract attention from all the corruption that surrounds him. And so he's been hit with a number now of his close aides and his economic development honchos, they're going to go to jail. And they're going to go to jail because they're corrupt. They've been using their positions and the positions involved with state money a lot of contributions went to the Cuomo campaign, and a lot of the money obviously went to some of these people. So the level of corruption, and a number of them, I'm not certain none of those, I guess, have gone to trial twice, but they've all been convicted. And so Cuomo is surrounded by corruption all around him. And then he turns around and says, well, I'm going to sue the Trump Foundation for illegal activities. Well, he's doing his best, I think, to distract attention from the fact that he's mired down in all kinds of corrupt situations as well. So we'll see how that plays. Now, I do think, Brian, while we're talking about New York politics, do you have a minute to touch on a few other points there? Or?
Yes, I do. Go ahead.
Well, I think the real primary election to watch right now, statewide, is not between Cynthia Nixon and Governor Cuomo, because I think the Democrats will hold the fort there and Cuomo will win, although it'll be interesting to see how close that election is.
Working Family Party says they'll rescue her if she doesn't win the Democrat primary.
Well, that's the whole idea here. Yeah. But the point I want to make is the real primary to watch, the real election to watch, Brian, is for lieutenant governor. And that's where Kathy Hochul, who is the current lieutenant governor and who I like very much, a very attractive candidate, has a very good chance of being beaten by Jermaine Williams, who is on the Democrat line for lieutenant governor.
The New York City Council guy.
Right, and who has been a black fellow, has been very active in city affairs and active groups of one sort or another. And it's probably, I don't know, I've never heard him speak, but I would bet he's a pretty good speaker. And he's been very active and has a base in the New York City area, which, of course, is the biggest part of the Democrat base in the state. And then you throw in the fact that he could draw upon the inner city areas of Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse. He's a serious, serious threat to Kathy Hochul. And that's one of the reasons why I think you heard her this week come out and say that President Trump has to be impeached. Well, now why? Where's that come from? Well, she obviously wants to establish that she's more liberal than Mr. Williams, which she clearly is not. The Nixon effect. I'm sorry?
The Cynthia Nixon effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm Cynthia Nixon and Stephanie Minor and even the Republicans, I'd be pouring money into this guy's campaign because this is going to be a tremendous embarrassment for Cuomo if Williams wins the lieutenant governor primary for the Democrats. So Cuomo will be running then as a Democrat with this guy Williams as lieutenant governor. And Cuomo will be facing that, he'll be carrying that baggage. Plus he'll be facing Cynthia Nixon on the working families line. Plus he'll be facing Stephanie Minor on whatever line she has there she's hooked onto. And then he has Mr. Molinaro, who is running as Republican.
Molinaro was in Hornell.
I don't know. Go ahead.
Molinaro was in Hornell yesterday. He made this point. What do you think of it?
So many feel that we have a governor that just doesn't seem to care about them.
Care about whom?
He said Molinaro says that a lot of people he's talked to feel that the governor doesn't care about them.
Well, I think if you're out in Western New York, you could certainly sympathize with that view. That's for sure. You will, and again, I would say something about de Blasio. Whatever you want to say about him, the base that de Blasio draws upon are people who make demands and such that I don't have much use for, but I think de Blasio does care about them, and I think they feel he cares about them. Cuomo, on the other hand, he's just sort of removed from the everyday New Yorker. I think Molinaro's correct on that.
We're talking with Dr. Bob. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back. Stay with us.
Selecting a nursing home for a loved one isn't easy until you've discovered Hornell Gardens Nursing and Rehabilitation. Hornell Gardens delivers the highest level of care, compassion, and commitment with amenities and activities that will enrich body, mind, and spirit. It's a place that's close to home. Stop in for a tour of Hornell Gardens, located at 434 Monroe Avenue in Hornell, or to learn more, call 585-222-CARE or visit hurlbutcare.com.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carolyn, who says it's pretty hot today in Phoenix, Arizona.
It is. Anybody who lives in the Phoenix area would be wise to head east and get away from that heat. They're actually under excessive heat warnings in parts of the Southwest, also parts of the Southern Plains. Even around Oklahoma City, it could be 112 later today, Brian, and that's hot all the way down into Texas. That heat goes nowhere. We're actually going to see kind of a stagnant weather pattern develop, and unfortunately, some of the stagnation is going to occur right over us here in the Northeast. A beautiful morning out there. Another gorgeous day with abundant sunshine. We're 80 to 85 today. Sunrise this morning was at 5:52. It'll set tonight at 8:41. Now, tonight we're clear to partly cloudy, 60. Low pressure dropping into the Ohio River Valley will capture moisture coming up along the Carolina coast. That means tomorrow we'll have some sun to start, but we'll cloud up during the day, 80. The moisture from the Carolina coast heads our way for tomorrow night. Showers will develop late, 60. Showers, thunderstorms, humid Sunday, 75 to 80. And Brian, it looks like we could see repetitive showers and thunderstorms for a good portion of next week, as lots of moisture comes up from the Gulf of Mexico and out of the Bahamas and right across the region.
We're back with Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob, you pick the topic.
Well, I think we ought to look at that, what's her name, Cruz, the lady that won Mr. Crowley's seat from him in New York City, the congressional seat.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Well, she's got the Democrat line, but Crowley is still on the Working Families line. And the Working Families Party, there was some effort on their part to try to get him off that line, which is kind of hard to do. But now a lot of top Democrats around the country, Joe Lieberman in particular, have come out and said to Crowley, for God's sake, stay on that line. Stay in there on the Working Families line. And I think if Crowley does,
he can beat her in the election. Now, she wants ICE to be protested publicly all over the place, whatever possible.
Right, and she wants airports occupied, I think?
All kinds of places.
Yeah. So she's, totally wild-eyed, and maybe that represents her district. I don't think it does. Certainly, I don't think it represents Crowley's basic constituency. So I think the Democrats very much. It's sort of like the Republicans stuck with that guy in Georgia. They just want him to go away. And now the Democrats just want this woman to go away.
Do they really?
Oh, yeah. No,
Even though a lot of the media types hold her up as an example of what's to come?
I think the media types in their usual half-baked fashion have no idea what's to come.
Yes, and on the topic of future events, your thoughts on the possibility of the Democrats getting control of Congress, and if so, the impeachment proceedings would begin. Will they take Congress?
No.
Why not?
Because they won't get as many votes as the Republicans.
And why would that be?
Because I think the Republicans have a base that is holding, I think, very well. Now, despite all this effort by the media to besmirch Trump's efforts in Helsinki, and, some of the things that Trump said, I think, are definitely open to criticism. But as someone said, I don't know, I was watching the other night, people don't vote on that basis. People vote on the basis of jobs, security, the potential.
What have you done for me?
Yes. And at this point, Trump can point to a lot. Now, it could be the soybean farmers going to end up in the dump. I don't think so. I think they'll be doing very well by the time November comes around. So I think the country, basically, the economy is in tremendous shape, and Trump's doing some other things that people want to see done, the wall and some of these other things. Plus, The big one, of course, is the Supreme Court appointment. And if he gets that done, then the real issue going into November is going to be what's going to happen to Ginsburg's seat. And that really is going to get hot. And that, if anything's going to motivate the conservatives, that certainly is.
We've been talking with Dr. Robert Heineman, Alfred University professor of political science, emeritus. Doc,
yes,
we're almost out of time here.
Well, I hope our listening audience will hang on just for a little longer. Or are we done?
Should we read the phone book? Keep this going? Thanks for stopping by.
My pleasure.